Boom. Shut up, Mark. We're recording. We have, what's this? The 17th day of October, 2015. And this is the Radical Agnostic, where ideology goes to die, people, as much as possible. Here I am. I'm your host. I'm John. We got my co-host, Mark.
Hi.
We got Brian, the stowaway guest, on mic number 4.
Hello.
And I am so happy to bring back one of our finest guests ever, Eddie West. Oh my God. You guys, we've had like 3 podcasts worth of discussion already. And now, of course, we'll all be silent and have no ideas. So we have a great list of stuff to talk about.
That weed you make us smoke before the show fucking fucked my brain up.
Oh my goodness. Oh, it hurts. Oh, mother.
Okay.
There's blood in
now
my mucus.
We've gone into Jewish shtick.
Yeah. I'm voting for a Jew for president, so I'm not racist.
I wanted to say your imitation of an old Jewish guy is pretty close to Bernie. You get... you're a little more nasal, but...
We're going to talk about a touching story from our personal lives and our Facebook lives. We're going to talk about the Democratic presidential debate. Alien structures in deep space? Question mark.
There's a saying: if the headline is a question, the answer is no.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's so true. And that's Fox News loves to do that, man. There'll be a running head, but it's a question. They're not telling you. They'll say, "Does Obama hate America?" And it'll just be on the screen for 100 million viewers to see. And then they're like, Bill O'Reilly's like, "No, I don't think Obama hates America." No. But the question was raised.
Does iced tea cause leukemia?
Yeah.
No.
No, you're fine. We're going to talk about mass shootings, but without mentioning gun control. So look forward to that, because there's a whole other angle to this that's very interesting and that does need to be figured out, and that even I have not figured out yet.
It's called controlling people's hands. Just chop off everybody's hands. They can't use guns.
Hand control.
Just make a law against hands.
We're going to talk about climate change. Is there a consensus? We're going to talk about some other stuff that Eddie's going to bring up. Brian's going to bring something up. You guys are going to remember to do that. We might talk about Islam and the argument against it, and the intellectual struggle I am having on that topic. And then
enough about Islam already. Nobody cares.
And then we got a controversial and titillating study done on women and their habits during ovulation. Do they dress to impress? So we're going to look at that study, a paper that I had to write about that. And
what class was that for? Was it for a class?
No, it's my
for
job.
Somebody else's class.
Yeah. Do you remember what I do for a living?
No.
He's an ethics counselor.
I work for an online company that
cheats. Aids and cheating of the college kid.
Quit overloading
That's
the
an
mic.
industry now. I just did it for money. I was just.
I'm in the elite company.
No, he's the 1% of cheaters.
I do it as a full-time job.
Yeah.
Man. Every day
Really?
I write papers. I write research for papers for graduate students and undergrads and PhDs. I've written 515 as of today.
Wow.
And I don't feel too good about it. But I've learned a lot, my friend. I have learned so much. It's kind of a blessing. And I work in my underwear and I make my own hours. But I do have to work about 40 hours a week, strangely enough. They have it figured out to make enough to pay my rent.
And he wears the same underwear this whole 40 hours.
You change underwear within 40 hours?
Part of the system, man.
Dude, you don't really
You
change
wear
your underwear during
Wait,
the day.
You're working at home and you're sitting there in underwear?
Yeah. I jack off naked. I don't
Brian,
know about you.
They're his lucky underwear. It helps him write.
Are you saying that you change your underwear during the day?
Every day.
When?
After I take a shower.
When he
I put on
shits
clean
himself.
Oh, after you take a shower.
Yeah, do you not take
He's
a
at
shower
the
for
24
40
hour
hours?
limit.
I'm on a 24-hour shower program.
I'll tell you right now, I don't take a shower every day, and I do not feel bad or guilty about that at all.
No,
I
the
feel
guys who
better
roll with
guilty
you
about
do,
how
but
many
not.
you
No,
not
they
you.
don't.
You're
No,
supposed-
they don't.
All right, whatever, Onion.
Come up and hug me right now and tell me I stink.
You don't stink. You smell like an onion. Now, I happen to like onions.
That stinks.
They smell good.
I don't smell like an onion.
You smell like an onion.
Then we're
They're
gonna
dude wipes, apparently. I just watched Shark Tank. That was the
Beef's
thing.
got you, though. Like, Beef still got you. His onion's bigger than your onion.
Whoa, this conversation just went in an entirely new direction. I don't want to know about
We're
anybody's onion.
talking onion.
You can't have meat without onions.
You can't. Beef requires onion.
And then we're going to talk about who would Americans vote for. In other words, the categories of people that people said they would vote for if they agreed on issues. I don't know if I articulated that correctly, but we're not there yet because we're going to start off with a correction. Last episode, I mentioned what turns out to be an urban legend that's a popular meme among liberals, claiming that Fox News sued for the right to lie in court. In other words, for the right to lie on their programming, they won a lawsuit.
Wait, before we go on, there was a meme
Oh,
that wasn't true?
yeah. Believe it or not, Brian.
I'm leaving, dude. This is fucking too crazy for me.
Mind blown.
So I believed it, and so after I said it on the show, I thought, well, I usually try to say things that I know to be the case, and that time I was following a meme that I'd seen so many times that I kind of assumed like there must be a basis. So I looked it up, and
It got snoped.
yeah,
But it's not entirely false.
no, but it's I would say about 80% false because what it was a Fox affiliate in Florida, like WNYG,
Right.
They had a lawsuit and they sued for the right to
No, they got sued. They got sued for wrongful termination.
right. Go ahead, tell the story, Eddie.
My recollection of the story is it was a story. The original story was some kind of story about something to do with the meat industry, and the reporter, and I could be wrong. Oh, I see how it is.
Go ahead.
I'm doing the mic wrong. It's my understanding that they basically wanted to find fault with something having to do with the meat industry or a factory farm or something. And I don't remember the specific thing that they were doing, but the Fox affiliate wouldn't let them air that, and then canned them for pushing for it, and then aired something that was like 180 degrees. It was just like, isn't this so great? This industry's so great. Even though they even though there was a story in the can about how terrible they were, the affiliate showed a story about how great they were.
Wow, yeah.
And-
So while knowing the truth about something, they intentionally presented the opposite thing to be the case.
And shit
So
canned.
strange.
And then so that the affiliate got sued, and then what was the result? The affiliate said that no, we should have the right to say
it was
whatever we
among
want.
it was among their arguments. When you are responding to a lawsuit or something, you are going to make every argument you think might stick.
right.
And it was my understanding that the argument they made, and since you looked it up, I'm just going off memory because I looked it up a while ago. Because I'm like that. That's how
Once I
roll.
found out that I had been wrong, I stopped the research because I didn't care anymore. I was bored.
It's my understanding that was among their arguments. Like, this isn't wrongful termination because A,
Right.
B, and C. It's because you were at will.
And the
also
affiliate
this
won.
And that. And they won the case
Right.
overall, and I do not believe that argument was dismissed. I think that, so like, when a judgment is entered, they have the option of being like, oh yeah, this was fucking nonsense, but that was cool, and this is why you win. I did not read the ruling even when I did the research, so this is not me working off memory, but my understanding of the case is that it was one of their arguments was to say we're entertainment.
Yeah.
We don't have an obligation to present
Right.
the truth in the they weren't arguing for the ability to lie, they were arguing for the ability to skew.
Yep.
Like that we don't have to take a position even if we know, we can talk about how Hitler loves dogs.
Right.
Like, we can totally do that. We're not obliged to talk about the whole Jew thing.
Right.
And that was not rejected.
And it seems probably we don't want to limit the press, but it's so impossible to say you're not allowed to air stuff that you know not to be true because there's no definition of that someone knowing something or truth even.
Well, then you get into censoring satire.
Right. Which would be a lovely thing, but I don't want it because I don't want to limit people's freedom. But the fact that there's a demand for satire news that isn't satire, it's not humorous, it's just a false statement. You know what? I hate those websites for existing, but I hate people for existing, allowing that to exist by wanting to click on stuff that's bullshit. They just,
The Onion's funny. I click on the Onion.
No, the Onion's completely different. I'm talking about those things where you have to, those websites where you have to look through it to find the part where it says that it's satire. They'll just tell you. One of them was Ann Coulter gets thrown off of a flight for screaming the word nigger. And I was like, oh, she would do that. And I clicked on it. This was years ago. And it was just, the more I read, the more crazy it got until I was like, well, this isn't true. But there was no punchline. There was no Onion headline.
That's not very vastly different than the Onion.
It is. Every Onion headline you know.
Only because you know it's the Onion. You just didn't know that site. You didn't know Jim Bob's news source was
I
an
disagree.
Onion
I think a lot of these websites are intentionally trying to make it confusing. Where the Onion does not try to confuse you.
The first Onion article I read, though, I'm like, are they trying to pass this off as real? Like, I thought that when I first, but I didn't know what the Onion was.
See, yeah. Mark had the same argument against me the other night because I posted a meme after the debate that said Ben Carson calls out all the Democrats for their lack of policy against dragons. I messed up the punchline, but that's what it was.
No,
Ben Carson was mad.
That's the punchline. Yeah. And my argument wasn't against you posting that article, and it wasn't even about that article existing. And I don't mean to call anyone out, but I think a woman who has been on the show, Chris McGuire, said it's her first. She's the first person commenting, and her commenting was, "What dragons, you fucking idiot!" And it was because she thought it was real. And then I proceeded to say, "See, this is the problem with this stuff: is it's becoming more and more out there." And people are reading it and thinking it's real and commenting, and we're becoming like idiocracy. It really is this progression that we are, and it's because, just like you said, they exist because people want them and people click on them and people read them and
they want their hand-me-down politics.
Yeah.
Right. And they want it bad.
And it's not even
me my opinion.
Like the Onion, you can read it, and if you read the whole thing, even if the headline isn't screamingly funny. It is funny.
Yeah.
You can find humor in it.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff, there's no real humor. Like that one, it was
that
humorous.
One there was. That's the Borowitz report from the New Yorker, which is a magazine I subscribe. It's one of the greatest American literary magazines of all time. It's an amazing publication.
But there are plenty of ones like the one you said about Ann Coulter. There's another one about Ann Coulter that I just read about her being a transgender, whatever, and she got kicked out or something.
Okay, but do you guys agree?
And it's not really.
You guys agree that there is a distinction, like for most people, between the Onion and the Borowitz report, and these things that just tell you a thing that could be true,
right? But it's also your sense of humor. Maybe to some people that stuff is funny. Ann Coulter screams "nigger" on an airplane. So maybe that's fucking funny to some people. But I think it's not funny to me. But I don't know. I don't want to be the fucking king of comedy. And
everyone who reads that could think that it's true and not be stupid.
But you're talking about a problem of expectation. And the thing is, the Onion, to stick with that, at this point, most people, not everyone, obviously, because it happens every time. That's why there has to be a satire tag.
Well, I've known for a bit, but I mean, when I first read it.
Most people know the Onion satire, so when you read it, you go, oh, I'm about to read a joke. There are other sites that aren't that. But if that's all they do, just because you've never been there before is not really an excuse for, like, not to be mean. It's not an excuse to bag on them. Like, if I'd never been to the Onion before, and not all their stuff is too ridiculous. I mean, it's always a little ridiculous. It's satire. But like, if you've never been there before, you're going to go.
And I don't remember what story I read, but it wasn't too far-fetched.
Really?
I'm like, this is almost... But then I just looked up the Onion, and I'm like,
one was like...
Now that makes total sense.
One was like, insecure bully in 10th grade considers career as police officer. Like
They've also gotten a lot more... They've occupied their space as satire more than they used to. Because they used to have some stuff that... Like, their stuff used to be a little closer to the line. Because remember, they used to be print publication first.
Yep.
It's kind of like Cracked, how like Cracked used to be a magazine,
yep.
but now it's completely different.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing there. And I feel like the Onion...
They made the transition beautifully
and
from
also
a business
a lot of
perspective,
people,
by the way. They nailed it.
A lot of people don't realize that the Onion is basically what AV Club came out of, too. Because you used to get the paper version of the Onion, and not only about the satirical news stuff, but it also had album reviews and movie reviews and all kinds of crap.
So when I put that up, I didn't know that anyone on my friends list would think that Ben Carson believes that dragons are real. But I think you guys proved your point, and I kind of fed into that whole thing.
Were there dragons in the Bible?
There's
That's probably why he doesn't believe it.
Well, and there's still dragons actually in the world. They're called Komodo dragons.
yeah.
They got,
there's
they got
water
deadly
dragons.
They're just
slobber.
they're little.
Dragonflies.
Poisonous slobber.
Well, they do mention in the Bible behemoth, and behemoth is a land animal that's described as having a tail the size of a tree trunk. And so for centuries, they assumed that it was a rhinoceros, but that didn't make sense with the tail comment. So creationists actually use this.
not
There are parts of the
rhinoceros.
Bible that don't make sense.
Right, but it wasn't rhinos; it was hippopotamuses.
Hippopotamus.
Yeah, that they thought.
yeah. Sounds like an elephant.
Because
that they were
because
looking
both of
at
them
back
have
then.
small tails.
in water too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work with any animal that we know, or elephants. Or
Hippopotamuses are very, very
So creationists use this as evidence that dinosaurs existed alongside man, because in the Bible they describe a creature that could only be a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah,
Really.
but also
Or
this,
a Nile crocodile.
but this is the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
30
good
feet
one.
long. So,
That's true.
or it was just made up.
But this is the same kind of thing. People thought
but I mean, there's actually
sailors
foundation
used to be
for it.
talking about manatees when they talk about mermaids, right?
Nope. It was narwhals, wasn't it?
Was it narwhals?
I think nobody knows for sure because they were describing them as
Now
people.
I got
so I think
the
there's
song.
competing.
Yeah,
The
but
songs in my
I
fucking
mean,
head
a
now.
narwhal has a giant horn coming
Yeah,
out of
actually,
its head.
the more I talk, I think you're right. Shut up.
But the kraken of old lore,
Well, that's just a
exists.
giant octopus.
Giant
Yeah, yeah.
squid.
Squid, yeah.
And bigger ones might have existed. And
was gonna-
don't tell me that
I was going to start throwing.
they couldn't have.
When you said Kraken, my first instinct was to
the
go
rum?
to Mama jokes. It was just to
Oh,
start.
crap, yeah.
I don't know why, man.
Well, if you got one, throw it out, or
I
just
don't.
only
It was,
just hang
related, it was
All right.
related to the Kraken,
So-
and knowing that your mom listens, I'm a little
Okay.
I'm shy about the Mama jokes.
There's probably a huge squid octopus that was attacking sailors. I totally believe it, because there'd be no evidence of it. They don't have bones to speak of, so that would, when they go extinct, they just melt. Cryptozoology. That's the field that all right, looks into this subject. I liked it when
All right,
I was
Mulder.
a creationist. Mulder.
Well, you used
I
to be a
want
creationist?
Yes.
So you're saying
How
that,
did I not know that?
I don't know. We've only spoken twice. That's probably why.
yeah, that's probably
I-
a good.
So we've started the
track to
show
go down.
with my correction. The Fox News thing was like, I'll say 80% false. It's still a horrible
but
piece of shit.
The Fox
See,
is
and
like
that's the problem,
80%
but that's just
false,
a
right?
problem of memery, I would say, because
Yeah, it is.
Because
And Brian's been railing against this for 3 weeks, and I'm seeing his point of view now.
and
And
okay.
Mark too. Yeah,
Beef
yeah.
got me started,
Yeah.
and then I just started. I'm like, God, this is bullshit, man. If
right.
you have a funny meme, I'll like your shit.
What's
man.
a meme?
But
Define a meme.
Richard Dawkins came up
There
with
you
the
go.
term in the 70s in his book, and he said it's a condensed piece of cultural. I'm sure you have a condensed statement that reflects a cultural viewpoint or something of that nature.
Essentially,
yeah.
And I'd go even further and say it's that, but it also has to be a picture of something, and then
now it is.
words,
Now it is.
and it's on the internet.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point I was making, is that a meme, conceptually, as originally described by someone who's
Not
getting
smart.
a little... well, no.
If you call Chomsky a moron, Dawkins is a mongoloid idiot.
Hey. Don't use
Using the
mongoloid.
medical term.
Don't use mongoloid. Don't do mongoloid. However, you know what? I'll give...
Hydrocephalic.
I question whether, like, not to be mean, Chomsky, my problems with Chomsky have kind of been consistent. My problems with Dawkins, and I don't know too much about his early stuff, so maybe I'm missing it.
Uh-huh.
I think he's senile. So it's a totally different complaint.
The stuff he writes on Twitter, man.
Oh God, it's ridiculous.
just-
It's terrible. Like, it's terrible. it's just I question whether
Eddie,
he's getting old.
you really stand alone, because I've had a beef with sort of militant atheists for a long time, and you really don't fit any of those stereotypes. Like, so I know why Matt recommended you to come on this program. Like, you don't worship the four horsemen, Dawkins and Harris and Hitchens and Dennett, but and so I really appreciate that. I just wanted to put that in.
Thank you. I do like Hitchens,
I
but I
don't
like
even
Hitchens
know-
like a lovable
I don't even
asshole.
know who two of those guys were. So
I've always wanted to do. I've had this idea for years. I want to do Hitchens style debates. In other words, it's two debates at a podium, and everyone just gets drunk.
Yeah.
you know what's weird? Am I the only atheist who's never heard any of these fucking guys talk?
No, you're a
No,
homegrown atheist. You're like a redneck atheist. There's like 8 of you, and you're one of them.
Yeah.
No, there's probably more than that, but
There are.
you're not very well represented in the media.
No.
No one's talking to you to find out your theories
You know what?
behind anything.
Let's get crazy and skip ahead to the last topic to join this in. So a poll was done to Americans, thousands and thousands of people, and it said, here's different categories of people. Catholic, women, Jewish people.
Fags.
Exactly. Would you vote for this category of person if they agreed with you on everything? So in other words, they agree with all your views, but would you vote for them even though they're a blank? So let's go from the top of the list. Catholic did really well.
Do we have to say yes or no? Is this like a game, or are we interactive? Are we interactive here? I just need to know.
We're all just going to say yes on all of them.
Okay. Are we?
Until we get to Muslim, and then you'll say no.
I'm going to say no to something just to create discussion.
Well, before we get into these details of the poll,
Yep.
When Kennedy ran, there was a big issue about him being a Catholic.
Yes, there was.
That's become normalized now, but he had to do something about it. He had to come out and say, well, I'm not going to listen to the Pope because, of course, he's American and Americans don't listen to the Pope.
Yeah.
Well, it's become normalized, but really,
people
I
were
think
afraid
still,
that a Catholic president would have allegiance to the Pope instead of the United States. That
well,
was the
and,
there was a
old
lot of
creed.
bigotry,
and
is the point.
still,
Oh, yeah.
since he was
America's
elected,
not a Catholic country.
he's the only Catholic president we've had, right?
Yes.
Nobody else has been Catholic that's
Joe
been
Biden
elected
is
since
the
then.
first Catholic vice president.
Vice president,
yes.
right.
You're correct. One Catholic president ever. But it's not a Catholic country. It's a Protestant country. It always has been. So the results of the poll were from the top to the bottom.
Misleading. It's a secular nation. It's not a fucking Protestant nation.
Good point. There's a good argument for that. 93% of Americans said they would vote for a Catholic if that Catholic agreed with them on everything.
Right.
So Catholics are fine. Catholic candidates, no problem. Joe
Sure.
Biden, they're trying to shove him in.
Grease them up, shove them in.
Yeah. A woman, 92% of Americans said they would vote for a woman.
So that's
It's-
more than Catholics?
Less, 1% less.
Oh, it was 93
okay,
for
yeah.
Catholics?
We're going down the list. Yeah.
I guess religious bigotry is somewhat easier for me to wrap my brain around, but there's 8% of people who are like, if she's got a vagina,
Yeah.
no way.
I would not vote for her. Yeah, 8% of 350 million.
Well,
I'm not
that-
justifying religious bigotry. It's just
Yeah,
That
'cause,
fits in
well-
with my theory of 85. My 85% theory that 85% of people are idiots.
Yeah.
5% of people you can deal with.
It's
They're fairly enlightened.
You're pretty close.
And then
if you-
10% of people are fucking mentally murdered, period. Toast. And that 8%, man, we're pretty fucking
Yeah.
close to that 10.
I
Hell
don't
no,
know.
I wouldn't. I wonder how many of them were women, too, because
Well-
there had to be a few.
Well, I mean, women do bleed once a month, and Catholics, not all
Right.
Catholics do.
And she
so.
might start dressing crazy.
Yeah, dressing crazy.
All right.
Hey, now, let him get there.
Looking for attention.
I'm setting up the show, man.
Yeah, it's
Little-
foreshadowing. Tied with women, 92% of people would vote for a black candidate.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Do they say black Catholic woman?
No, they don't combine them. Next, 91% would vote for a Hispanic candidate. That's good for Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. 91 tied with Hispanics. Jewish, Bernie Sanders. So 91% of people have no problem
I'm
electing.
actually somewhat surprised at that.
Me too.
In a good way. Like
Me too.
But like,
Yeah.
because there was just a controversy about some guy a politician in the South who like shot himself, and the estimation is, or the guess at the time, and I haven't looked into it since then, was that it may have been because somebody was starting a rumor that he might be Jewish, and it was like such a big deal.
Yeah. In
And
some
I don't know
communities, I
all
guess.
the details of that, but
But people have really come around from 100 years ago. This poll would have been a lot different. I'll tell you that. Jewish, 91%. Big drop to the next one. 81% of people would vote for a Mormon. A Mormon. Mitt Romney and the like.
You think it's the whole polygamy thing that has everybody?
Yeah, the history
But,
of the
see,
religion
part
in
of
this,
the problem-
in this country, including the Mountain Meadows massacre, and they're fleeing to Mexico and all this crazy
part
stuff.
of the problem with
Killed
a
few
poll like this though is like
Utes here and there.
you've got-
They killed Indians too. Go ahead.
You've got a hypothetical that's very unlikely. Like, okay, a woman can agree with you because they're people. So I've heard, and and like, there's nothing about being a woman that necessarily reflects anything about a position. So it's a perfectly reasonable hypothetical to say they'll agree with you on every issue,
Right.
But like once you get into religious stuff, I mean, some religions have more or less adherents who are like hardcore.
Well, that's the whole Muslim thing. That's what Ben Carson was saying. He said, "I wouldn't vote for a Muslim because they might have more allegiance to Sharia law than the U.S. Constitution
I'm not even
because
saying that.
their Quran says that."
No, I'm not even saying that because I feel like that's somewhat bigoted because that's the same thing that
Yeah.
Kennedy had to do with the Pope. I'm just
Right.
saying that, like, if somebody's like really into Mormonism, it is unlikely that they're going to agree with me on every issue. I mean,
Right,
you know,
but-
like,
but-
so it's just it stretches
All
the
right,
bounds.
but we
of the
gotta
hypothetical.
stay within
Yeah,
the
yeah.
hypothetical.
I know, but I just think some of these hypotheticals are a little like, what are the odds of that like being a real thing?
Oh yeah. Next one down, another big drop. 74% would vote for a gay or lesbian candidate. Still pretty impressive. I'm surprised at that. I would have thought it would be in the 60s or 50s. 73% would vote for an evangelical Christian. So that's very interesting. A lot.
Less than gays.
Yeah, fewer people trust fundamentalists than trust Catholics, Jews, women, blacks, Mormons,
But
gays,
still 75%.
Sorry.
an evangelical Christian.
Sorry,
Well,
three.
I mean, Jimmy Carter was an evangelical Christian. So I like him. 60% of people, big drop again, would vote for a Muslim. 58% would vote for an atheist. So,
That's actually a raise because it used to be
Yeah.
a lot lower.
but so it's
Below-
conceivable that an atheist could win, but very unlikely because he'd have to get all of that 53% of the country to vote for him or her. And then finally, at the bottom of the list, under 50%, 47% would
Socialist.
vote for a socialist. So this is the Bernie Sanders problem.
I still remember when I was a kid. I want to say I was around 12, and Bernie was getting interviewed because I lived in Vermont for a long time. I was born in Massachusetts, but I lived in Vermont for a long time.
so
And
he
I-
must have already been in the House
he's
or
been
the
there
Senate
forever.
by then.
He's been there longer than Jesus.
Yeah.
Term limits. Term limits.
But
That's why I don't want term limits. 'Cause I
because
like
what's
Bernie.
Bernie's party?
Independent.
Capital I.
Mhm.
And I had to have that explained to me, like
The
because
party?
lowercase I just means you don't have a party affiliation.
Right.
Uppercase I means you're socialist. And that's how it's described to me.
I think all of us are probably surprised at the results of this poll.
I'm not.
And not
I'm
that
sup- I'm-
socialist comes under everything else. Muslim,
because
atheist.
the
that's
right
shocking.
has done a big demonization of socialism,
which
thing.
we already have with Social Security and welfare. And
It
a million
wasn't.
other
It
things.
wasn't as bad a slur. Communist has been a slur since forever, and the Soviets thought of themselves as socialists more than necessarily than communists. I
Yep.
don't know enough about them to say that for sure, but
I'm-
I mean, they're the
Well,
United.
and I think, wasn't it the National Socialist Workers' Party, the Nazis?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the United Soviet Socialist Republic.
But it
So-
was a
but
fascist government.
Yeah,
though.
but
Right,
if
right.
it gets associated with that shit,
Right.
that's like it's been maimed, bro.
Yep.
And they decided, I want to say like 10-ish years ago, ballpark it, to start using that as a slur.
Yes,
And now that it's a slur, now they got that.
that's what
negative
they've been
appearance. So
calling
I'm not at all
Obama the
surprised.
whole time. He's a
Yeah.
socialist, you know. So.
And so, unfortunately, Bernie's getting screwed based on that because I mean, I think everyone's always been a little squingeely about socialism, but not.
Well, not
to
if
the
it works
extent.
for them. Like, we're cool with comparing ourselves to a socialist country if the person's cool with doing that, if it suits their agenda.
Right.
Like, you get into the gun control and they're like, Norway. You're like, yeah, Norway's socialist. I don't know if you guys fucking know that. But, so we throw it around when it works for us.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
that's why it doesn't work for anybody. So it got
We'll-
a negative connotation.
We'll talk. I don't want to drone on about Bernie too much. I have problems with the guy too.
Yeah,
I
actually,
gotta
you
be
do
honest.
want to drone on about Bernie, but what were you
It's
going to
rough,
say about,
Brian.
what
It's
were you gonna
rough.
say about
You're
Bernie?
hitting me hard here, man.
You told me to
cut-
take your power to
cutting
call
me-
you out.
I'm just surprised that this poll didn't go further and have like, okay, well, what about
Satanist.
a Satanist?
Yeah.
What about a child molester? What about a drug addict?
Yeah.
What about a this? What about
I wonder
a
what,
murderer?
what
What
if-
about a
nothing ever gets 100% or 0%, right? So who would vote for the child molester? They're like, well, if you do
other
this
child
time-
molesters?
yeah,
The Duggars.
yeah.
Suckers, he's got like what 30 votes right
Yeah.
there, right?
Register the kids.
That was well played, man.
Good
That was
one.
well. He's in the spirit of this shit.
So a very nice and happy story as we continue. Our friend Zyra, who got involved with the Bernie Sanders campaign last week and started a Latinas for Bernie Facebook group and everything. She, which I didn't know, is not a U.S. citizen. She's a legal resident, but hasn't gotten around to citizenship. It's an involved process, so she can't vote. And our friend Tony Capps, this guy is, I don't know, he's not politically involved. He doesn't really get into politics a lot, but if you had to describe him, you'd say he's anti-political correctness, maybe, and you'd say he's kind of right-wing on a bunch of issues, and then left-wing on others. But you could safely call him a right-wing guy and a really just kind of a shock humor type of person online, and a good man in person and in his life.
Well,
and a father.
I was
and
going to
a
say,
husband.
I think Mark said it the best. Like, Tony Cabs is a good dude, regardless of what he might want you to think.
Exactly. That was a beautiful quote.
It was a beautiful quote, man. It made me happy to see it, because he is like, Tony Cabs is a good dude no matter what because he's not going to want you to think that.
Exactly.
But that's what he is.
So what he does is he sends a private message to Zyra and says, hey, I remember hearing that you can't vote yet, and I can. So I was thinking, just tell me who you want me to vote for, because you're involved in this stuff and I'm not, and I'll go vote for that person. And it was just, there was no ulterior motive. They're friends. We're all friends. He did it out of the blue. He said, tell me who you want me to vote for and I'll do it for you, because I see how excited you are
about how much it means to you.
Yeah, about this Bernie Sanders campaign. And everyone just, like, all these people that aren't voting for Bernie, everyone loved it and shared it. And it was really nice, man. I mean, that's a genuine a gesture, And so...
Especially considering that Tony and Zyra agree on almost nothing politically.
Yeah.
Almost nothing.
And, even in terms of like immigration
I've seen them
and
go
Hispanic.
at it and her call him out on hateful shit that he said. And I'm laughing because I'm like, he doesn't even mean that.
No.
Like, he doesn't mean it at all. He just said it to
trying to
stir
get a
up
laugh.
some shit.
Yeah.
He doesn't mean it at all.
He's a counterculture guy.
Yeah.
So anyway, guys, I just thought that was really cool.
It was.
We could brush over this. Astronomers were checking out one of these wacky galaxies so many millions of light years away, and they were looking at a star, and how you detect planets in other galaxies, exoplanets they're called, and we've not detected many. In fact, this might have been in the Milky Way, in our galaxy. Anyway, it's a distance.
Now, exoplanets, I thought were they
exoplanets are definitely planets in other galaxies.
Are they other galaxies?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, wherever this little guy was, they were looking at the star, and the way they detect planets is you just direct the viewer at the star, and then you see objects pass in front of it. They block the light. And using Einstein's equations and whatnot, you can calculate what that is, how big it is, and it's usually a planet, or sometimes they can even see moons. But they were looking at this star, and the interruption pattern that they found was not, you couldn't make sense of it as planets. So they want to get bigger telescopes and focus on it, and also focus our that SETI thing that searches the sky for radio signals from aliens.
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Is that what SETI stands
I
for?
believe
snap.
it does.
Yeah.
Bam, dude.
I like how you asked as a question, like, is it? I'm going to say it exactly right.
Well, that was just a
exactly
guess.
the thing that I know.
seriously just guessed.
Is that what it is, man? And so it's, in other words, it's not planets passing in front of us. So one astronomer said, maybe, there's a slight chance that this could be giant superstructures built by intelligent civilizations that are
I'm
passing.
not saying
in front
it's
of us.
aliens, but it's aliens.
It's alien.
To me, that seems like you're reaching kind of deep in your ass for that.
Yeah, for sure, but it wasn't marketed as anything
Right.
like a certainty at all. It was like, it's probably, we don't know what it is.
Except for in the headlines, alien superstructures.
As a
in
question,
deep space.
No.
Did we find an alien structure in deep space?
It wasn't
No.
too misleading.
Are these alien superstructures?
Well, this is the kind of shit they would build, gentlemen. They would put stuff in front of stars to collect energy, massive solar things, and that would transfer wireless energy to all their technology. Don't poo-poo it.
Cosmic Wi-Fi?
But when we look out into space and see stuff, and I think it works with telescopes as well as the naked eye, can't we see stuff that doesn't exist anymore?
Definitely.
Dead planets, like there's
Definitely.
so
Because of
could
the time it
possibly
takes-
this thing that we're seeing
Be gone.
not even exist anymore?
No, probably. Because we're seeing so far into the past.
Well, it depends what it is. I mean, for all we know, if it is just like a weird shaped planet or something, if it's an intelligent life, well, then yes. I mean, it's probably been millions of years,
gone.
depending on how far along it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to destroy ourselves pretty in a timely fashion
Yeah.
comparatively. So,
Yeah, if you wait 100,000 years,
Yeah.
Whatever's going on isn't going on anymore. I mean,
so
they might
even-
not be extinct, but they're
And
not.
and I guess my point is, even if we would find out that, oh yeah, it is this superstructure that's like,
Yeah, what if they're Federation
somehow
space
made out of
stations and
whatever.
they're just waiting for us to
Ma-
develop
Babylon
warp
5.
drive?
or well, and I'm saying it could even be something that was created millennia ago.
Well, it would
and now
be.
whoever created
Yeah.
it is dead.
They would
or maybe
Probably.
is our ancestors.
Yeah.
The
But-
engineers.
But
Yeah.
even if that's true, I mean, you got to bear in mind that we are seeing it in real time, just with a huge delay.
Right.
So
right.
we would be able to, if it was that, and I really see. I think we're getting too deep down the rabbit hole of speculation to be like, if it's a dead civilization, like we don't even know if it's any kind of civilization.
no,
yet, but,
yeah.
but even if
We're
it was
speculating.
that, there would still be value. We just could never talk to them. It's
Right.
like watching an old video. So yeah, I mean
Right.
to that extent, but I don't know. I mean the
it
sun
would still be great.
Yeah, it would
that
still
we
be
would
cool.
know that
and,
they were there.
I mean, the sun's 8 minutes away.
Well, but
The sun
would,
could have
would
blown
it?
up 8
But
minutes
would
away.
it be great?
Yes.
Well, for you, it would be great. I'm just saying it would.
Mark would be on Facebook for all you liberals talking about how great it is that we know aliens exist.
They're just
Just
more
let me-
immigrants who
let
want to
me-
take our
remember.
jobs.
No,
Just
just let me
remember how
let-
you treated
let
the
me
Republican
explain.
aliens.
Let me explain my comment.
Your whole life is calling out liberals.
Yes, liberals, and I don't call anybody else out.
No,
Only liberals.
you do.
Because liberals are the only people that I'm against.
You are.
Yes, it's just because most of my friends on Facebook
I
are
know.
fucking liberals.
I know.
So I don't get a lot of conservative memes coming across my screen.
I know.
But what I'm saying is, if
check-
we
check
did,
out
if
mine.
it was 100%, I mean, if it was 100% proven that aliens did exist at one time, or these things were built
Right.
way away from us, don't you think there'd be sort of maybe a weird panic?
Yeah.
I don't know, something like
could be.
amongst people that like believe strongly in.
I think
don't
it would
know,
be much-
Christianity or whatever. I mean, might Scientologists increase and go, see, we're
The ring is Xenu. Clearly, it's like
Right.
Xenu's ring.
Yeah. I mean, it would be.
It,
I think
definitely
I think it would be okay.
change
if
more
there-
things than just
If there was a ship.
Well, aliens, they're real.
If there was a ship in our atmosphere, that would cause panic.
No.
But like seeing them, I think we could integrate that into our lives. Okay, there would be some crazy social
well, and
things.
again,
that
and,
happen.
and
Tom Cruise is going back on Oprah.
well, and I
Yeah.
said
That's
I-
happening.
I said this is still me opining and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of people who believe what they believe, no matter what you throw at them, they'll be like, no, that's bullshit. No, that's not what my Bible says.
Yeah, they could
So-
say it's a liberal conspiracy. Just like climate change.
That's what New York said about the first sequoia tree that came out that way. They said it was a California hoax.
Yeah,
Too big. Couldn't be a real tree.
yeah, and panda bears.
Platypus.
When they reported panda bears from China, they were like, "No, there's no such thing as a bear that only eats vegetables."
I
That's
saw a
impossible.
funny meme about the platypus. It was two beavers, and there were two ducks sitting behind him, and the husband beaver is talking to the wife beaver, and he's like, "Look, I'm just saying, maybe we should get to know some of the other couples."
If I recollect, when the platypus, like when they first came out with it, well, when it was first discovered, people were like, "Bullshit."
Yeah,
Well,
Yo,
I mean,
duck bill, huh? Looks like an otter.
a furry duck.
Well, and also what a lot of people don't realize or forget is it's also poisonous.
what?
Platypus.
Yeah.
The animal is poisonous. to
Animal
eat?
has claws on its.
It's got a poison
things,
gland, right?
and a poison gland. Yeah.
Hey, there's on
Like
the
they'll fuck you
creationist
up.
side. There's a lot
Yeah.
of gaps there. What's it called? The
Nonsense? It's called nonsense. That's what it's called.
I'm going with Eddie on this one.
Where's the half- where's the half-
Crocoduck?
fish.
Are you going to go with Crocoduck? Are you going to go there?
oh yeah,
Right, Kirk
Crocoduck.
Cameron.
yeah. The rapture's coming. So we did that. Alien structures in space. Aliens definitely exist. We
That was
figured
fun.
that out.
I so hope it's a Death Star. Like I almost bought a
I
Death
know.
Star shirt when I saw that headline. I'm like, I'm getting a fucking Death Star shirt.
That's no moon.
Yeah.
I got the Millennium
moon.
Falcon. I need the Death Star.
See, and that was a funny meme. The whole. This is the first and only time that the Death Star will be able to be seen from whatever.
Yeah. You have to have those, man. If you're gonna meme something, please mame that. I
Or-
put out meme challenges
This
too.
is the first time that
I like how you say
Halloween-
maim.
Yeah.
It's like anti-meme.
Mame. Yeah.
They did a
You're
poll.
maiming the truth.
They did a poll about that, about pronunciation of
Meme?
a bunch of words.
I like meme.
And that was one of them. And it's like 68% of people say meme, and there's like 10 or 12 that say mame, and then some
What about
say,
Mimi?
some people say mimi.
I like Mimi.
I used to mispronounce minutia.
When you get to like
What
Kentucky,
these people like is what Beef's going with.
when you get to Kentucky, you know, all bets are off.
dude.
You know, pronunciation is just up in the air.
That's for real. My mom used to
Or
drive
New
her
York
nuts
City.
that they called the street that I picked up the bus on. They called it Lafayette, and she's like, "It's Lafayette." And
Yeah.
they're like, "It's Lafayette." All right, I
I'm
don't know where
never
you're
saying
from. I don't know where you're
Lafayette,
from talking
Lafayette.
all funny like that.
All right.
I still say Lafayette.
Do you guys in the audience, do you believe that we can talk about mass shootings without mentioning guns? And that's what we're about to do. Here's the thing, guys. What's one of the facets of the mass shooting argument that we talked about? They're all men. They're mostly white. They're mostly middle class.
Also
Okay?
young.
Mostly young.
The only woman I read about was like pissed off at child services.
Yeah, and okay.
So she popped a couple foster parents and the caseworker
Yeah.
and somebody else.
Yep.
But that was the only one that I read about.
Right. So outliers, of course, in every sample group, but this is overwhelmingly young white men. And why is that? And what do we? So my friend Abe, a great fan of the show and a contributor too in a lot of his ideas, he put up an article from a feminist publication that said, let's look at this. You know, no one's talking about the fact that they're all men. So there's a man thing here going on. And I was 100% in agreement. I think we should be talking about that. And then,
Well, because it's an inarguable,
exactly,
pretty much fact.
yeah,
It's men that
if
are
you're
doing this.
studying a phenomenon, you'll look at the demographics.
Yeah, what this is almost a universal commonality,
Right.
In America anyway.
Right.
It's men.
So
I don't know what everybody else is doing.
the feminist publication, and I've heard this argument before, said, you know, a lot of times they will say, we need to look at how the patriarchy hurts men, because men are victims of this too. And look at all these men that you know get beat up for being weak or having a lisp or something, and or these men that are taught that they deserve a beautiful woman, and so they become rapists or something. So in other words, they're saying the thing we're against as feminists, you know, toxic masculinity or patriarchy, a male-controlled society. This hurts men too. So the argument to me was a little bit insincere, because it's kind of saying, look, the thing we're against hurts everybody. Masculinity, in other words, hurts everybody. This whole you have to be tough thing that's expected from men, therefore, is bad, and it's leading to things like mass shootings. My friend Ryan,
But it's not masculinity. It's extreme masculinity, right? Because
the expectation of extreme masculinity, in the representation, you're saying there's a social representation.
yeah, because masculinity doesn't imply that you think you deserve a beautiful woman.
No.
You can be masculine and not, you know,
You sure could.
Lots of other things that you're detailing and saying.
I don't know
the
that
society.
I don't know that
forces
the
on us.
feminists would agree with you.
They
though,
might not agree with me,
yeah.
but-
and that's where I'm coming apart from them, because they're kind of saying, look, masculinity is bad all around. It fucks up everybody that it comes into contact with.
There's a certain degree of sloppiness of language there, though. I don't think that I would, far be it from a room full of dudes to start
Right.
talking too much about what feminists think.
Right.
But, they're talking about a specific kind, the specific kind that is imposed on society.
Right.
Like, I would personally, there's nothing masculine nor non-masculine about having a lisp. There's nothing,
Right.
and anybody who'd make fun of someone for having a lisp, I would argue it's like, that's not a sign of masculinity, it's a sign of being a douche.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as a society, the
Or
society's
just
view of
let's-
masculinity.
Yeah,
So
let's
and
say
so
strength and to be like to
it's
be
not
the-
even strength. It's
be the guy that changes the tire when it gets flat. This kind of stuff. They're saying these are negative images and expectations of gender roles that are being imposed on men, and it's turning men into mass shooter monsters. My friend Ryan had probably the best argument that diffused that entire point of view, though. He said, well, then why is a mass shooting a modern phenomenon? masculine roles were even stronger 50 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Those roles were always there. So why this phenomenon now?
That's not things are changing. 100 years ago, being gay would get you lynched.
So
now
you're saying the feminists could say masculine roles are changing in a way now that's leading to mass shootings.
I would argue that it is probably most likely, it's kind of like watching some religious people now. Now that there's some things threatening their hold on government, now it's, suddenly the rule of law becomes, well, wait a minute, this was supposed to be my way of getting above everyone else. Now that it's not, now I have a problem. Same thing with, I would argue, with the toxic view of masculinity. Oh, it was toxic, but back when white dudes owned everybody and got to make all the decisions, no, there weren't any mass shootings because you did get to have a woman because it was provided for you, because you were the only one who got to make those decisions. Now, as time is going on, women can vote. They think they're people,
but then, so if you're the feminist right now, you have to be, because you're explaining, you're doing a good job of defending that view. So, but wouldn't that mean that the feminist movement is causing mass shootings now because that's what's changing? Because women can vote now, and that's what's changing in gender roles.
It's like blaming. Yeah, but that would be like saying, isn't it kind of Lincoln's fault for the Klan? Because he did free the slaves. It's like, well, yeah, but that was a problem. Having slaves was a problem.
Yeah.
Not letting women vote or work outside the house is a bad thing.
So the feminist is saying things are slowly getting better for gender equality, and these mass shootings are a reaction against that.
Yeah, I don't think it's conscious, but I would argue that I feel like as those traditional masculine roles are getting threatened, as it's no longer, well, I'm white and male, so where's my lottery ticket? As that's a little less common, now somebody who felt they deserved a beautiful woman and a great job just because they're white and male doesn't get that, and they, because they can't deal with that appropriately, they wind up doing that. Now, I'm not saying every time, I'm not saying, but I'm just saying, like, I would argue that my guess would be that it's most likely that sort of thing. It is a severe reaction of a certain subset of people who cannot cope with the fact that they're not the special snowflakes they used to be.
Right.
That makes a lot of sense, and that's a really good argument for them.
Well,
my problem is that it's missing one element, and that is it's and this is a problem with feminism in general. I haven't seen a recognition of masculine attributes that are good. In other words, they don't believe that gender roles are just conceptual models. They think they're all bad, in other words. Whereas my argument might be there might be a positive example of masculinity, attributes we could give to it that aren't exclusive to men. Under my theory, everybody has some masculinity and femininity in some ratio. So I believe there's room in feminism to say the argument you just made is very good, but also that there's no positive role model of masculinity, and feminists will always just call that a sensitive man who's like a woman. That's the only thing they can think of that's a good man. Is someone who's feminine. That's the only example they can give.
I like to fight on the internet, so I go to lots of different places, and I do see it. I mean, I do think that what is called third wave feminism does have a lot of issues. That I probably shouldn't get into because I get yelled at. I get in trouble. I'm very pedantic. I have a lot of issues that are. But that's not.
Say what you believe, and if someone reacts against you, you don't be censored. This is a podcast. This is the radical. The whole point is. Go ahead, say what you think the problems are. But my problem you don't agree with feminism, that they don't give positive attributes to masculinity.
I guess I would say it's probably an aspect of the problem, which is the sense that I do think that first wave feminism was largely about the right to vote. Like, hey, can we just not be slaves? That'd be so cool.
Yeah,
I mean, not slaves, but you know what I'm saying?
Legal equality.
Yeah, at the barest level. Like, I would like to be able to vote.
Right.
Can I have a job?
Democracy.
Is it legal for me to have a job or hold office?
And then second wave
was more like introducing the world to the concepts of like pay equality, introducing the world to gendered
taking
language.
Off your bras, appreciating your body.
Well, but like also like gendered language. We say servers instead of necessarily waiters, or flight attendant versus stewardess. Because the problems of gendered language when there's an expectation that this must be, and the movement has moved a bit away from that and into more specific societal issues.
Third wave
feminism, which I mean, and I don't pretend to be competent enough to be like, I know exactly where all the boundaries of all these waves are because I know everything.
But you're giving a general overview.
A general overview. The newer wave is that wave of trying to get things like the Equal Pay Act and trying to do things like destroy gender terms. And feminism has traditionally had a problem dealing with really anybody who isn't a white woman. people of color and things where it's like, well, now you've got several issues working against you. And, the fact that you're a woman makes it that much worse, and traditionally feminism has had problems like getting those people accepted. Traditionally, feminism has had some problems dealing with things like transgendered people, and they're trying to make a movement to get to that.
Right.
But I do think that, especially in this age of internet philosophy, feminism in particular has a problem wherein there's a certain sloppiness of language that's kind of accepted, and I think that's the problem you're seeing. And I don't see that specific problem as much as you do, but I don't have a problem seeing it as a problem in some circles.
Do you agree that it would be valuable in the society to attribute some virtues to masculinity and femininity without making them attributable to men and women in particular? Because everyone's got both.
But
are you open to my theory, which is that everyone has some femininity and masculinity, and that those are useful concepts to describe the kind of battle of wisdoms within each person? So, for example, when I compete at jiu-jitsu, very high pressure, very tense, very scary, you're putting your body on the line. It's a crazy hard thing to do. And I lose. Now, the masculine wisdom is all right, you got to get back on the mat on Monday. We got to fix the problems we had. We're coming back in 6 months, and we're going to do this again, and we're going to win, and we're going to not watch TV and not spend so much time dating, we're going to do this one thing. That's the masculine wisdom. And if you want to be a champion, that's kind of the thing to follow. This is my theory. Now, on the other hand, you have an equally valid feminine wisdom, but they're opposite to each other. So the feminine wisdom is, this is about the journey. Look what you did. You came out here. You competed. You overcame something, and that's very important. You should be happy with yourself. And usually that's what I embrace when I lose at the tournament. I'm in a good mood usually because it's over, and I'm so happy that it's over because I get so nervous. So in other words, I see in many areas of life competing wisdoms, and I think it's valuable to categorize them as masculine and feminine.
Why? Why is it valuable to categorize them as that?
Because you put value on both of them.
Because there's
an
inherent connection to biology.
Okay, but
that's
what
why.
if you just put an inherent...
There's a connection in
okay, but what if you just say
reflect biological
strength
truths
is a good quality,
degree.
Perseverance is a good quality, enjoying your experience is a good quality. Not saying that's a good quality, it's a masculine quality. That's a good quality, it's a feminine quality. That's a good quality, it's a transgender quality.
Because they're rational categories that generally apply to the sexes.
But they only apply because of societal pressure.
How can you prove that?
How can you prove that it doesn't? Because you're the one making
Ronda
the claim.
Rousey,
Because we know that testosterone has an effect on behavior.
Ronda Rousey is a male, right?
Estrogen...
Ronda Rousey is a male. She's masculine.
No, Mark, you are not listening
and
to
I
my
am
theory
feminine
at all.
because I do not practice jiu-jitsu. And I will not get on the mat. And then after my ass gets beat 7 times,
these
I'm not going to get back.
Have nothing to do with
that's
my
what
theory.
you're saying because that's masculine and feminine is more enjoying the experience.
I don't see value in.
So I would be more feminine, and Ronda Rousey would be more masculine.
Yes, in that issue, would you disagree?
Maybe
I would disagree. I would say
why? Because you're a man, so nothing you can do can be feminine. Because my theory,
I would say I'm a man because I'm a man. She's a woman because she's a woman, and she is strong and she has elements of strength in this, or her strength and perseverance is in a different skill set or different whatever than mine is.
All right.
It's not about your
Brian,
if you're a man or a woman.
I didn't say it was.
But when
a
you
woman
make
can
them,
have
but when you
masculine drives.
Well,
see,
stop right
but
there,
you're
but
making
that makes
you're
it
saying
gender.
it's masculine,
and you're saying that those things
you're saying
are
that's a
inborn.
masculine drive,
and not necessarily
No,
universal, not necessarily universal, but that there's a gender-driven reality that to a certain extent, and obviously you're acknowledging outliers, but
that's just fucking physiology. If you don't think that that's true, then you need to go back to fucking school.
If you don't think hormones have an effect on behavior,
hormones have an effect.
Let me just drop it like this. What John's saying is that these traits that he's describing as both masculine and feminine, think of them as enzymes that you have in your fucking body or hormones. Now, as a man, you're going to emit more of certain hormones generally.
Yeah, some men not so.
Some men
have
not
a lot
so.
of estrogen,
as a
fatty
female,
tissue, and then
you're going to exhibit or release more of other hormones because you're a female. So we both have all these same.
Everyone's
hormones.
got testosterone.
Everyone's
got estrogen.
And if it's not functioning in the female properly, you're going to have fucking health problems.
So here's the thing. So there's value in these two perspectives. These two perspectives definitely exist. The perspective of kind of like the nurturing one versus the aggression. Right? Those perspectives exist.
Okay.
Even if I bought your concept that they're inherent to a certain extent, but not necessarily universal. Inherent, but not universal to the genders. Even if I bought that, I still would not see a value in gendering it, because then there'd be a certain degree of violation of expectation that I don't think should be present. So I totally get the dichotomy, the two different perspectives, but I see no value in gendering.
But you know what we would
perspective.
also have? Common fucking ground. Instead of I'm feminine and you're masculine. No, we're both.
Yeah.
So now what John has created is common ground for us to both stand on
Now
and say,
Eddie's
we
right.
all have these same qualities and they exist in both of us to varying degrees.
Right.
So let's just fucking get along.
Yeah,
But I'm saying the same thing. We both have common ground because we're both strong in some things.
Sure.
We both persevere in some
He's
things.
not really saying
we're both
anything
smart in
different.
some things.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
just
except for
saying
you're
to
saying
settle the
that to
masculine
be
and feminine
smart,
argument,
book smart, you're a woman. To be smart,
No,
street
when did
smart,
I say
you're a
that?
man. Well,
Hold on,
I'm
hold
giving
on.
an example. Like
We need a dinner.
You're saying to be
Okay.
strong,
A dinner.
strong physically, you're a man.
Listen,
to be
no,
strong,
no,
maybe
no,
emotionally,
Mark,
you're a woman.
Mark, you're not talking about my thing at all.
You're setting up things, traits as gender.
He's
Yes.
Are you not?
Yes.
He's
Okay.
And I'm not
So maybe
attaching
I'm not
gender
saying-
to sex. I'm not attaching gender to
I
sex.
understand.
So a woman,
but you are attaching gender to like the way your brain works, or the way that you can physically do something.
How about my
or
example?
The way that you,
Let's talk about my example then, and tell me why I'm wrong. So to me, those are competing wisdoms. The one I called masculine, which said push forward, forget all else, win. And the other I called feminine, which said, no, the value is in what you've done. You're in good shape. You have all these teammates. Go back to training and compete again if you must. But this was a valuable experience. Those two things are not compatible. Those are equally valid wisdoms.
I wouldn't say they're not compatible, but I get your point.
But they bump against
they're
each other.
complementary. They complement each other.
Well, that's one way to look at it. Maybe I shouldn't look at it as contradicting
Yeah,
each other
why can't you?
Because
why
to
can't
take
you
the
think
male,
for
to take the masculine one, to take that path, you can't think. I mean, talk to champions. You can't think like, oh, it's okay. It's the journey. It's okay if I lose. These people are single-minded. They want it, and they don't care about anything else. That's why champions ruin so
right.
many relationships,
and,
because they're single-minded.
We see that, and we want to emulate that, right?
No.
And we see that in other realms, and we want to emulate that,
Maybe.
right?
Maybe you want to emulate the other one, and you think that's smart. It's
George
smart to,
George W. Bush, he just wanted to fucking get rid of Saddam. That was his driven fucking thing. That was his one thing that he really wanted to do, and that's cool,
right?
right?
Mark,
Champions,
This
they're
train
driven
is
by
so
one
far off
thing.
the
Mark,
fucking
you're
track
really
right now.
not.
I would like
please
to
come
get
in.
to,
You're
to
not.
the just. I see the value in the two perspectives. I think they're complementary.
So what
we can have extremes. It's like when you look at complementary colors. You can have all one color, all the other colors, but they go good together too.
So we have to have. It's intelligent to have categories for these
Yes.
complementary.
I just
things.
don't see value in gendering those categories. Where's the value in gendering them?
The value is that there is a loose connection to physiology, and that's reflected in sex.
But if you stop there, now you're setting up an expectation. And there's no need for that. And so when someone violates that expectation, it's that much more likely that they're going to take shit for it. How much shit do you think Ronda Rousey had to take when she was growing up because she was masculine?
Eddie,
Now,
that's not an argument against the use of categories.
No.
The
I'm
word
not-
sociopath carries expectations
Yeah.
with it. That doesn't mean we should stop using it, because then sociopaths will be unfairly expected. It's an intellectual category. It's useful.
I don't deny
for
the
discourse.
I don't deny the utility of the category.
Right.
I am complaining about the gendering of the labeling.
And the negative effects that'll have on real
But
people.
maybe a sociopath should be a masculine description, because it's mostly white men that do mass shootings.
Yeah,
To be
they
fair.
So
probably should.
sociopath
Can I add one
should
thing?
be
You seem
just,
to think I'm
I just
holding
wanna
one
add-
up against the other. I'm not.
I just wanna add
I'm
one-
not the champion.
I just
I'm
wanna
the
add
guy
one
that's
thing.
I'm a champion.
I'm the guy that's happy
No,
after
John,
it's over.
you don't understand what my argument is, because that's not what my argument is at all. I don't think that you're saying all men are better than women,
Okay.
or all masculine is good, feminine is bad,
Okay.
or saying that anyone that does this
what's wrong with my theory?
is a male, and everyone that does this is a female,
Okay,
because
good.
people have the same qualities. My problem is when you say that this is a masculine quality,
Right.
and this is a feminine quality, then like Eddie said, if then you have more of feminine qualities than masculine qualities, you're more feminine than masculine, and then what that implies in our society.
Well, but
And
if
then-
people
or
are
if you're
jerks
more
to that,
this
if
than
people
that,
are jerks
people
to a
are
man
jerks to that.
who is
People
feminine,
are jerks to that.
That's
though,
their
John.
problem.
Yes, it is their problem, and it's the rest of society's problem.
But it doesn't
It's
mean
the whole
get rid
entire
of the
world's
category
problem.
because there's assholes misusing
But
it.
you don't gender something that has no gender.
Why is it important to gender the category?
Because it's intellectually dishonest to remove the gender
How is
from
that
the
intellectually
category.
dishonest?
Because it's connected to sex and physiology.
No, it's not.
Loosely.
It could be connected to experience.
It
could
is
be
that
connected
too,
to
but
well, then
men-
how are you saying that this is more important than that?
Men are more likely because of
More
physiology
likely.
and hormones.
Blacks are more likely
Let
to
me
steal your
finish.
bike.
Let me finish.
Whoa.
Men are more. This isn't anything.
You just
we're,
went there.
We're fine.
No. Just
Listen.
no. I'm not. I'm not woeing the yelling. I'm woeing the blacks are more likely to steal your bike.
Well, lots of people believe that, right?
Well, it's probably true statistically.
Okay, well then, what? Why are you saying whoa? Why you have a
I
problem
said
with
whoa.
what I'm saying?
I said, well, it wasn't him.
I kind of forgot. Did you have
You
something
had a
to say,
line.
Brian?
Yeah, say your line.
I do.
Because I know
I do.
because you think my thing has utility.
Yeah,
my,
I do,
My
because-
reason
because
to
this-
gender is because
hold
it's
up.
intellectually dishonest not to.
I don't have anything to say. I do. This discussion started about the feminine masculine debate, about masculinity being toxic and feminists having nothing that they can point to masculinity that's positive.
Exactly.
So please don't cut me off because I'm on a fucking roll. And that's close to a fact as far as I'm concerned. I've never heard a feminist list one fucking positive thing about
I've
masculinity.
asked them on the show.
Okay, so we already have these. It's been fucking gendered or whatever you want to call it. It's been gendered. What John's suggesting allows us to see each other, ourselves in each other.
Yeah.
And that's what I think that you guys aren't seeing at all.
Yep.
Is that his point is that we should be able to see ourselves in each other, and that in itself will be a bridge to solving a lot of our fucking differences. And I don't think either of you guys have looked at that.
And
That
realizing
it does allow us to see ourselves in each other.
it's good for self-discovery in that way.
And to open discussion so that you can see, like, okay, I do have some of these qualities,
So-
and it's not all fucking bad. Let's meet in the middle
Right.
and actually work out some shit.
So I'm walking off the mat,
So
and
I'm
I
just
have
saying
these
it's not
competing
without
wisdoms,
validity.
and I have to choose a path. And I usually choose the feminine path of just being okay with who I am and in valuing the community that jiu-jitsu gives me. I usually don't take the masculine champion path.
But what is the value of thinking of it as masculine and feminine? What is the value of that specific thing? The categories I get. I'm not
I
arguing on
just
the
did
categories.
that. I thought I just did that.
No,
Well,
you
okay,
talk about the
okay,
value of the
no, no, no.
categories.
And
I agree
Eddie,
with you.
Let me-
because the traits that I call masculine are loosely related to testosterone.
Okay, first off, let me say something. You're saying that all feminists are saying that masculinity is a problem, and you've come on here and you've asked feminists to say, well,
We are recording. Go ahead, Mark.
okay, so you're equating feminists and the people that wrote this article about men and masculinity being this toxic thing that's
Leading to mass shootings.
that the society is given to men as this ideal, and we can't live up to it, or it fucks us up, whatever.
Right.
And I'm just saying that that's one group of feminists that wrote this article. It's not, when you talk about feminists, you're basically talking about the majority of women, I think.
Yeah.
That would consider themselves
If
feminists.
you do it by the
So I
dictionary
don't think-
definition,
right,
then
so-
they are.
So I don't
But if you-
think I don't think that's the majority of women's ideas about men. I don't think the majority of women think that all masculinity is toxic and there are no good qualities to men. I don't think that. I don't even think that the women who have been on the show and you asked them to do that
No.
and they couldn't come up with it at the time, I don't even think they believe it. They just couldn't come up with something at
You're-
the time.
you're right.
Now let me finish. Let me just finish. So, if I can remember now. Okay. That, and then Brian's thing about us reaching common ground, I mean, I could be completely different than everybody else on the planet. I think I am already anyways. But I don't need you to say this woman also has masculine qualities for me to reach common ground with her. I know she's a fucking human, and so we have common ground.
Right, you don't need
Like-
that, but we just talked about that societal obligation or whatever to design it around. Probably more people need it than don't.
And
to
it
be
would
able-
help
that-
us
and that-
understand
that
these
could
shooters,
be.
too. It would help us understand them using those categories.
That could be correct. But I think, and this is just an opinion, this is not, I have no research, but I think there's a possibility that you're going to cause more friction and more maybe non-understanding by gendering some things like that. Like saying someone that's physically strong is more masculine, someone that's emotionally strong.
Maybe I'm just looking at this from a different perspective. Maybe I'm outside of the gendering box, and I'm thinking like what he's talking about is actually kind of taking the fucking gender out of it.
It really kind of does.
It's making masculine and feminine more abstract concepts.
It is making it more abstract, but at the same time, it's narrowing the definition of it as well.
For intellectual purposes, for the purpose of self-discovery.
But John, you have to understand that the majority of people don't think of themselves as both.
I know.
Right. Most people think of themselves as I am masculine.
I'm recommending
and they are feminine.
Right.
And then even still, if you say, okay, well, if you're more physically strong, you're more masculine. If you're more emotionally strong, you're more feminine. I'm not saying that that's what you said. I'm just using that as
yeah.
Well, that would be misconstruing his theory.
Okay, right. But I'm just using those as examples. It could be if you're more blue. If you like blue, you're more masculine. If
I'm about to agree with you in a very weird way.
But so when you're
saying it does more harm than good. My categorization does more harm than good
with certain people.
Wait, hold on.
I don't know if that's a majority of people or a minority of people, but I think a lot of people aren't able to process that and say, "Oh, I have both of those. I have some of those qualities and I have some of those qualities." I think most people are going to go, "Oh, I'm way more like that, so I'm that."
Do you object to the categorization at all, or the gendering of the categorization?
The gendering.
Okay.
So if you called it something else,
yes,
you would agree.
Yes.
And we would be
just
pretending that it had nothing to do, that males didn't happen to have.
Then we'll
call it A and B.
Shit.
A category values and B category values.
Men
tend to have A category values and women tend to have B. That's just a joke. It's a joke. Everyone knows you're just putting another symbol in front of the thing.
But there's value in that. I can say fireman used to be the word. These days, firefighter is the word. Expressly because there was, even though fire women are a minority.
Right.
Doesn't matter because you should recognize that they can be, and we should just approach it neutrally, even though you know that it's mostly firemen.
But
so with the gender of what you're describing,
the harm that comes from my categorization always comes from people who misconstrue the theory. It never comes from someone who gets it, that everyone has both and that they're equally valid drives.
Well, but language matters.
This is language that people are already using. Then.
And that's the point. That's the point.
That if you start a bad context.
That there's a bad context.
So what he's doing to me is changing the context to make it super fucking user friendly.
That's what I was trying to do.
And I think it's a fucking
and still
good
true
bridge.
To life.
And I think it's a good bridge to get from where people are we have the masculine and the feminine separated to where Beef's talking about he is to where we're not masculine or feminine. We finally discovered that we're just fucking human. Mm-hmm. Like that's what he's saying. I think what he's suggesting is that we use this as a bridge to get to where Beef is from where we are now, and not everybody. And those people who don't get it are going to be the people who aren't going to fucking get it regardless. They're not going to get it. Those are the douchebags you talked about. Those are the fuckheads that we don't want to deal with on a day-to-day basis anyway. It doesn't matter how good things are going otherwise. They're still going to be what they are,
and here's
which
my
is
point.
Assholes.
The shooters might be coming out of a lack or an absence of something like my theory because they have no way to look at masculinity in a more objective way, how it interacts with their own femininity. So
because they reject femininity because they reject it being tied that I don't got no vagina, So what I'm saying is there's no reason to tie it to the gender. Even though you know the tendency.
I have your boy. So they put out this thing about masculinity tearing it down. Your boy shoots that down. I have another idea about it. I'm going to call it the participation trophy theory.
I think I know where you're going with that.
Okay.
Soft society.
I love my participation trophy.
We all get fucking taught that like everybody's great, nobody's better than anybody else. Let's all get the participation trophy.
Yeah.
But so people and this is a fairly extreme view because the dude that I was talking about this with is a fairly hardcore fucking individual. Mm-hmm. And they're like, so everybody grows up thinking they're fucking special and expecting to be special, expecting to get treated special, expecting to have shit come their way because they have everything handed to them. We got to be PC. We can't be who we are. It's almost bad. Some guys might feel oppressed as far as like who they're surrounded by and who they're living with. They can't be a certain way. They can't act according to their own fucking nature. We have to tone down and be PC for everything.
Yeah.
And everybody wants extra who got 100 likes on Facebook? How many people hit your Instagram site? I get all this bullshit spam mail about get more followers on Instagram, get more likes. This is what we're all based on. So then this dude finds out what we've always found out, what all of us have found out, right? We're probably not going to be fucking rich.
Right.
We're probably not going to be fucking famous. We're probably not fucking special.
Brian, did you grow up wanting to be like a rock star or famous?
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't everybody want to be fucking cool, like
I
rich,
sure did.
famous? Yeah.
I wanted to be
So-
Billy Corgan.
So now I'm
I
gonna
wanted to be a fire truck.
see,
I'm gonna expound on this though, because I have a lot of friends who work in the school system, and a lot of them are counselors. And what they're saying is these kids, they're raised by TV and video games. They don't have interpersonal skills. They don't have fucking conflict resolution skills.
Yeah.
They don't have fucking coping skills, and they're expecting somebody else to step in and solve their fucking problems. So when they get overwhelming, you get the fucking snap factor.
Yeah, I agree with what the thing you just said about kids and why they're growing up this way. I don't think I agree that liberalism is to blame and the participation.
No, but it's a
trophy.
part of it.
You know, the kid who
It
wins
could
the
be a
game.
part of it.
It could be the kid who wins the game, though. They all might get the same trophy. That kid knows that he won. He knows he's the best, and he has that
Yeah, wait,
gratification.
hold on.
They're not all just drones.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that everybody's taught that they're special just for showing the fuck up.
Right.
And when people find out that they're not fucking special just for showing
They
the
have
fuck
an
up,
inner
then they
crisis.
can't
That's
deal
right.
with it. And because of their lack of crisis resolution skills, and because of their lack of conflict resolution skills, and because of their lack of interpersonal skills, they can't approach people to deal with that. They won't go to people for.
So, and this is something that Bill Maher brought up, and after I say it, you're going to say, of course, Bill Maher brought it up. So the recent guy in Oregon and the guy before, I don't know how much before him, in California that like shot a couple people and then ran a couple people over in his car.
Oh
and,
yeah, it was like a downtown thing, right?
yeah, it
like
was
in
like
the
a
club,
down-
almost by the club scene.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I remember the films of it were all like it looked like a downtown, like a Scottsdale area. Or
So
a 4th
both
Avenue.
of them said in their
Manifesto.
summation, whatever, when they're
Yeah.
that basically they had never kissed a girl, they'd never dated anybody, no
I'm
no
not
women
special.
found them attractive, blah blah blah. Timothy McVeigh supposedly never had a date, died a virgin. The Virginia Tech shooter supposedly was like. Women said he was a creep and would follow them around.
Was
and they
McVeigh
didn't-
was the Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City
baller,
guy.
yeah.
That's a
So
weird-
he's so
It's,
sorry.
it's a
go-
sketchy story, though. There are good conspiracy theories for that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's a great book about it. But so Bill Maher's suggesting and saying that basically these kids are doing this because they're not getting laid.
Which actually also feeds into the Muslim extremist perspective.
Well, and then
too.
you think about George Hennard, who targeted women, specifically targeted women
Yeah.
in Killeen.
Right,
Specifically targeted women, and he left some note about the neighbor and it was a way back thing about the neighbor and the daughter and like rejection over and over.
Right. So that goes back to what you said, John, what the article that you read about the feminists and saying that this toxic masculinity is coming down. I mean that's
Well, in
that's
those
part,
cases,
that's
it
part of
would
that
certainly
too. Is,
seem to have played a role.
right. And that's part of that is, and with all guys growing up thinking that they are special and
Yeah.
they're going to have this beautiful woman enter their life and they're deserving of love and they're
Well,
all this
not
stuff.
just guys, like girls are going to experience the same kind
no,
of
they're gonna experience the
letdown,
same
but they
thing.
might just manifest differently in
Right.
them for the most
Which is
part.
why there's value in using categories of
Oh, I'm
masculine
with
and
you.
feminine.
But then
sold
even
me on the first
on top
take.
of that, you got just sex as thing that we're obsessed with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Nobody's ever said, "Oh, I have too much sex. I wish I didn't have as much sex as I would
Right.
have." And the fucking Carl's Jr. commercials are like softcore
Yeah.
porn. You know,
Yeah.
there's this
Yeah.
there's
Woman.
sex all over.
Yep.
So it's like in your face.
Okay.
Like,
The hot
this,
girl eating
everyone
the meat.
everyone else is getting laid, but you.
Right.
All right,
You're
we're-
the only one sitting on the sideline.
We're in deep water, guys. How do you fix this then? So what is to blame? What is the ideal society where men don't become mass shooters? What do we do? Are we changing it back to white picket fence 1950s, or are we trying something new? What's the
I don't
answer
think
to this?
with information is easy to get and fucking entertainment overload like it is that we're ever going back to white picket fences unless like there's a serious collapse.
Well,
And then we have
even
to
if we
work
did
back
go
to
back
that.
to white picket fences, there's problems in that society as well.
That's my point. There's
You know what I mean?
huge problems.
So
So
I'm not
segregation.
I'm not by me saying any of this stuff. I'm not suggesting that if we didn't have this stuff, we would have no problems. I'm just saying that this stuff might be tied in with other aspects of our society,
Sure.
and just what
I think
is
if there's-
what comes out of that society that we have developed.
Well,
It's,
I think if there's one thing we have determined about the whole mass shooting thing is that it's not a one issue thing.
Nope.
No,
If
right.
you're just out there posting your stupid ass gun control memes or your
Now,
stupid
no gun
ass-
control.
or your
We
stupid
failed.
ass mental health memes,
Or your stupid ass Second Amendment names.
yeah, or any of them. Yeah, that's what.
Eddie-
Well, because the Second Amendment
Eddie's
guys are going to
gonna
go with
flag
mental
on this.
health, or from my cold dead hands, or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's
There is no one fix.
there's not one.
We
face
tried,
of
guys.
You
mass
just killed
shootings.
Brian's or Sean's thread, Brian. You just killed his thread.
How so?
He mentioned gun control.
Oh,
yeah, we failed.
No, I'm talking
we're
about
not talking
memes.
about it.
I was talking about memes.
But by the way,
They're not. It's not the issue.
gun
Like,
control is really good, and they should all be confiscated. Anyway, no, I was totally kidding. All right, we're gonna take a break and drink some whiskey because the computer's not working too well. We'll be right back.